Hey guys, my name is Austin Praden, the owner of Droptine Studios, and today we have Davin and Lala on the podcast, and we're going to talk about Repro and whitetails and exotics. Let's talk about it. All right, guys. Thank y'all for coming on. We appreciate it. I'm glad to have y'all. Glad to have y'all here and walk around and see everything. So if y'all don't mind real quick, just for the people who may be watching, if they don't know who you are, do you mind sharing your name and a little bit about you?
My name is Davin Cox, owner of Venado Sires. Been in business doing Repro since 2008. Been in the whitetail and breeding business since 96. Kind of shows my age a little bit, but so we've been doing this. We have a mobile unit, goes from ranch to ranch, and we do a little bit of everything as far as Repro is concerned.
Right.
We also have whitetail, axis, and fallow. So
awesome.
Yep.
No, thank you very much for inviting us. My name is Lala. So I do own the company, which is Advanced Deer Genetics. I moved from Mexico into Texas 2 years ago. I also do work for Dr. Jason Coe and Dr. Mai, who they own Advanced Deer Genetic US. So what we do is we do artificial insemination, embryo transfer, semen collection as well, like Davin does. But we also work in different countries like New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Mexico. So Mexico is a really big part for us as a company. And it has been really great, visiting all these countries and people. So it's very, very interesting. There's always something new.
Yeah.
Right.
Different cultures, different ways, how they do everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, so can y'all kind of describe what Repro is? Just for there's so many people getting into the industry that don't know what AI, don't know what embryos are, anything. Can y'all kind of describe what Repro is as a whole in simple terms?
Well, I can go into the AI and collection part, and you can go into the embryo transfer part. So we do, and basically Repro is what it says, it's a reproductive side of breeding animals and higher end genetics, trying to increase your genetic capability on a shorter basis. And so we do artificial insemination, which there's two different ways that you could do it. You could do it laparoscopically and then vaginally. So we do collections as well. And so if you have a stud, we can come out, collect it, process the semen and everything right there, which that's the process of taking semen from a bull, buck, stud,
right.
And then doing concentration counts on it, viability on it, and then basically putting it into straws that we use to artificially inseminate,
right.
And freezing it. So, and then those can stay around for years and years and years to come.
Right. So can you kind of walk through some of those terms? Like one thing I know that we'll do is we'll use terms that people don't know, but we think is common knowledge.
Yeah.
So can you go through laparoscopic? What does collecting mean? When you say vaginal, what do you mean by that as far as the process?
All right. Laparoscopic is instead of when I say vaginal, so we take a speculum and we go through the vagina, and then we'll inseminate on the back side of the cervix. So we'll have to go through the cervix, which is the area between basically the uterus and the vaginal space. And typically we'll try to go through. There's a little opening in the cervix when they dilate, so you can go through and inseminate in whichever horn you're trying to go to. Because right now, like most cervids, they have two different sides. They have one side and they're bifurcated, is what we say. So, and typically on whitetail release from both sides. And so when you're doing vaginally, you typically want to go to one side or the other, or both sides for whitetail. Laparoscopically, it's a little bit easier because you can actually go in and see with two little incisions and two little laparoscopic holes that we make, and go in with the scope and see the actual uterus itself, and see which side ovulates, one side or the other. Typically on whitetail, you have two ovulations or multiple ovulations on one side or the other, so you inseminate on both sides. Fallow is a little bit different, and axis is a little bit different, where typically they'll have only single ovulations, either on the right horn or left horn. So you got to find those ovulations so you can tell which ones you're going to inseminate.
So will that make it have anything to do with how whitetail are typically prone to having twins?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And then as far as the collection part of it, we use a method called electroejaculation, which is basically we'll have a little probe that has electrodes on it, and then it's a rectal probe, so we put in there and it stimulates the prostate, and we collect semen that way. That's been around forever. Been doing it in bulls and whitetail and red deer and just about every animal so far. The exotics, since that industry has kind of picked up, we've got into a lot of that as well. And but yeah, no, so it's it's fun, it's interesting. I like the part where the exotics are kind of rising up in the industry because it's something new. It's something new for us to kind of venture into. Yep. Embryo transfer wise.
Well, as Davin said, like we do artificial repro, which includes everything that is out of the nature or natural process. Like natural process, let's say on a doe and a buck, the doe will come and hit whenever she needs or she wants in a specific time of the year, and the buck will be chasing her, and he'll breed her. So
when you say in heat, that just means ready to breed, right?
Correct. Yeah. So the natural process will be the buck or the male in whatever species will deposit the semen inside of the vagina, like Davin was saying, that part of the female, and then the sperm will swim through all the tract and get into the point of ovulation or the place that needs to find the potential embryo to be fertilized. So what we do as well is like artificial insemination and the semen collection, but we also offer the embryo transfer, which is a little bit more complicated, if I can say it that way, or a little bit more of a process. After you inseminate, like Davin was saying, we are going to leave the female, or the doe in this case, we're going to leave the female for 7 days. So the embryo will be 7 days old. So the embryo will be floating into the uterus of the female. And then after the 7th day, we're going to do a surgical procedure, what we call flushing the embryos out. So you're going to take the embryos out of the mom, and you're going to implant those embryos, if you want, into fake moms, or you can freeze the embryos for being planted later on. And why we do this, because just to give you an example, people can understand a little bit easier. If you have like your best doe in your ranch, if you inseminate her, you're going to have maybe like, let's say 2 or 3 babies on the ground per year. But if you do the embryo transfer, which they need to be under treatment before the AI or the insemination with a lot of hormones in order to make them make or have more ovulations instead of maybe like 1, 2, or 3 potential like conventional insemination. Right. So you can have the chance to have more babies on the ground or more progeny out of your top genetics of your ranch doing the embryo transfer instead of just conventional AI. Those, obviously, if they are the top genetics or the medium genetics or just normal genetics, they have to be inseminated in order to be flushed the embryo side of the body, which is pretty cool. I mean, I would say is the fastest way to improve your genetics. Doesn't matter what you want. If you want big antlers or if you want big bodies to produce venison, or you want big mass on your antlers to produce velvet, for like the Asian market.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what you want. You have to identify your best females,
right,
and then do the procedure of the embryo transfer.
And it just goes off of what production you're wanting.
Right.
And like what we can talk about is everybody's going into your GEB values,
right?
Your breeding values in whitetail, going off of certain codon markers and the actual value in total. So if you have a doe that has a really, really good breeding value, like an SS with a negative, just say 0.2, you can super ovulate her, and that's what he's talking about, giving her hormones and leading up to the actual breeding of her. And all that does is it causes her to release a lot of eggs. And so then you take a sire that has a really good breeding value, or whatever you're trying to produce, breed those together, and then flush that doe out. And then and typically what he was, instead of having 2 or 3 offspring a year, you can have
up to 30. Yes, 32 I think has been the biggest producer.
Yeah.
Wow. And what species was that?
Whitetail.
Really?
It was here in Texas, actually. I think it was 34.
Wow.
We had in Mexico 2 years ago one that gave us 32.
Wow.
But the record is here in Texas.
Yeah. Wow.
So
that's insane.
Yeah.
Because what would be the average in a whitetail that someone gets?
It will be
around
6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on the program. Typically in all these repro programs that you have, whether it's artificial insemination, whether it's embryo transfer, the longer you're in it, the better your success is going to be. So starting out, we suggest, hey, don't think that you're just going to flush these does out and just hit a home run.
Right.
It doesn't work that way, not in any repro program.
Right.
Because there's stages that you have to go through in order to have that successful program. Because not all the does will react to the hormones. Will flush properly. Your recips are the fake moms. Some of those won't take. So you have to go through that process of finding the donors, which those are the ones that you're wanting to flush, donors.
Right.
You have to go through the process of finding those donors that have good success.
Right.
And then you also have to go through the process of finding those recips that take and have good success.
Right.
And that takes years.
And even the aspect of like if you bottle feed or not, because you might have a recip that produces great and births great, but she's a terrible mom.
That's right.
That doesn't take care of the babies.
That's right.
Are you bottle feeding in your program? Are you not? So there's a lot more that goes into it as far as just the manual labor.
Too many steps or too many details they need to see. Because just to give you an example, like a lot of people they identify the donors, which they are like the top genetics in your ranch.
Right.
So when you do the procedure of taking the babies out of, or the embryos out of those donors, they're empty, right? They have any babies left. So all those super good genetics are going to be into these fake moms, so what we call recips, that they don't need to be like good genetics, because at the end of the day, what you want is just a mom.
Right.
So a lot of people, they do not understand that. They say, well, my recips are the worst genetics that I do have at my ranch. So just I don't really care about them. You need to care about them, because now they are the most important dose at your place, because now they're carrying your best genetics.
Right.
So it's, those little things that people
100%
takes time.
Yeah, a $3,000 doe just became a $30,000 doe overnight.
Yes, overnight.
Yeah,
overnight. And those are the ones. And so that's the reason why these programs they just don't happen overnight. But you build on it and build on it, and to a point where you have these programs that year after year, I mean, you're successfully just knocking it out of the park. And those are the top productions that you want. So when we're talking about, switching, whitetail herds over to have these good breeding values, you can do it over time, just, AIing all your does with bucks that have really good values, and yes, eventually over time you could start filtering out all those that you don't want, or the ones that you don't want, you use those for recips.
Right.
And typically, especially in the whitetail industry, because AI has been such a large aspect of it. Everybody really knows, hey, which does take, which ones don't.
Right.
And the ones that quote unquote don't have the good genetics or that you're wanting, but they produce year after year after year, those are the most important ones on your ranch right now. So,
well, and another aspect too, as far as like and I would say most people that hire any of us do treat this as a business, right?
Yes.
You get to control what your outcome is, because like for us, we just live covered the past 2 years. And so like 1 year we had like 50-50 males, females. Well, then the next year was like 70-30. And for someone like me, I only want bucks.
Yeah.
So, but I had 70% females and 30% bucks. So that was kind of a damper. But if I would have done it right versus being too busy to think about it, I could have just gone in and male sexed everything and that's for my program.
That's another aspect of the artificial repro side of things is yes, now you can collect bucks and sex them. So if you're wanting a majority males, I mean, there's the ability to do that.
Right.
Now, of course, just like any side of the repro end of it, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
And that all goes off of success of the buck, the quality of the samples that you get.
Right.
Because you do have to send that off to Sexton Technologies.
Right.
And Navasota, and they have to run it. And they have a strict guideline and a process that they run the semen through. So there's certain parameters that they have before they even go in and run the samples through the machines. And if those parameters aren't met, then they can put it up conventional, but they're just not going to sex it.
Yeah. So what all could go wrong? Because I know we had stuff as far as like the semen heads were stuck together.
Yeah.
Like what all could go wrong if people are trying to sex? Because you can do male sexed and female sexed.
Yes.
I don't think a lot of people realize that as well.
Well, there's what they call their primaries and secondaries, and what's what we call the morphology of the cells. You can have bent tails, heads that are just completely off. What you were talking about, the sticking of the cells, which we call glutination, and that goes off a gel fraction that's in the sample itself. So all of this, what I say, quote unquote, is a perfect sample. You have to have a lower percentage, and they have those parameters that they have, but they have to be under those parameters, primaries and secondaries. And that's the bent tails and the morphology of the cell itself. And then you go off of the glutination. And so if you have a large number of cells that are kind of stuck together, then that sample right there, they're not going to run. Because for them, they have to, and they only have a certain amount of machines that they can run every single day. I think it's like 6 or 7 right now. So they can only take in so many samples from clients, and then they have to pick the best ones to run. And so that's why it's so kind of, and a lot of people get upset because I know myself, I've collected really, really good samples.
Right.
And by the time they got there, their parameters weren't met. And so they didn't run them. And there's different, they go through the process of trying to figure, medias out, because they have their own media that they come up with to run through those machines. And their R&D is constantly trying to better, better. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
Certain years are better than others, and that's kind of why people get upset about that, because they spend a lot of time and money on in risk involved in collecting all these studs, and send in and I get calls all the time. Why didn't they run it? Why? And it's because of the parameters that they have, and they have to run the best samples that they can.
Right.
And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So.
Yeah, because I've seen different practices. I'll leave names out of it just in case, but like we've gone to a ranch and they will have someone collect a buck, live collect, and then instantly put it in to whatever they need to and drive it to sexting technologies. Drop it off, like they drive the 6-7 hours to get there. The doors open, they hand off the tank, they get a hotel room, they sleep for 6 or 7 hours, and they said they've had the best success rate with that.
Yes.
Like I think they had, that specific ranch had the best male sexed twin buck fawns out of any year when they started doing that. And so like, what are some other practices y'all have seen at ranches that people try to take to have better results?
Well, that in itself, because there's two different methods that you can do when collecting the buck to sex semen. What you're talking about is they use that semen fresh, and that's they collect the buck, they take it up there, they sexed it right there. They give you the samples without freezing it, and then bring it back, and then you inseminate all your does there. And by far, with any species and any AI, your fresh semen has the best conception rates.
It does.
Yeah, because you don't go through that process.
And you need to remember that, like Davin is saying, you go, do the collection, take the sample to the lab, and all this procedure. But you need to remember that the does are already cycled. They're ready to be inseminated, and they have to be inseminated at a certain time.
Yeah.
So this, it's a lot of risk, a lot of money. Like we used to collect red deer up in Canada, and we used to collect in the morning and fly down into the States to get the semen done. So it's a lot of procedures, a lot of process. Like, imagine just flying with the box full of semen. What do you do? Do you tell to the customs, like, I just have semen here? So it's good fun.
That's crazy.
And so all these processes there's a lot of steps, and a lot of people, a lot of steps and procedures and everything that we do that people don't see.
Right.
And so it's just not like we collect something and then fill it up in straws and freeze it and everything's good.
Right.
There's certain extenders that we have to use, and every species is different. Because in the extenders itself, there's different material in there. There's different. There's antibiotics, and then there's glycerol. And glycerol is what is used to help freeze. And some of these animals, they could take glycerol pretty well, and some of them you can't. So there's two-step extenders that you use, and then there's all-in-one extender that you use. So there's certain techniques that you have to use in every single species in order to get the top quality and top production. So. But it's a process. It's a process, and that's what's fun for us, is because now that the exotic side of things are kind of coming up, we have to kind of build those procedures and protocols and work with that, and that's what's fun for me.
Right.
Yeah, and every animal is different. Like, let's say that you're going to collect a whitetail or an elk or a red deer. You'll find some bucks or some males that they don't like the extender that you use for for the rest of them. We have had to use extender on a whitetail that is better for the elk, and but there's going to be one out of 100 maybe. But you need to identify those animals. Obviously, they're going to be super important, and you need to get the collection done because you need that, those genes or that semen for your program. So you need to find out, and is what Davin is saying. We need to, with this new exotic industry growing like crazy, we will need to play with all these, and it's time consuming, and it will be very interesting, exciting times.
And it's really hard to have a client or go to a client and say, hey, can you let us, experiment with your $150,000 bongo or kudu or anything else. A lot of people are skeptical about that, but with this industry growing like it is, it's going to come. It's going to come to a part where we're going to see, embryo transfers or more embryo transfers in these kudu and bongo, and which is going to be so much fun.
Right. So I don't know how much y'all can share. I'm sure some of the people using or doing some of these things kind of want it on the DL until they can get it done. But as far as what you can share, are there people doing recips in exotics? Are there people trying to? Yes.
There's a few people that are already starting out, and a lot of the guys that I talk to, a lot of clients that I talk to, they say, well, we'll wait until, so-and-so figures it out, and then we'll get into it. Well, by that point in time, they're already going to be 3-4 years ahead of everybody, and which they understand that, and they've taken on that risk of experimenting with all this, and but they're going to reap the rewards when it's all said and done.
High risk, high reward.
That's right.
It did happen with the fallow.
Yep.
Like, a lot of people were telling us, I don't really want to do AI till somebody else started having good results and all that. So when the people were having good results, they were like Davin was saying, like 3-4 years ahead of everybody else, and they were, the best in the industry. And that's going to happen the same with the exotics.
Yep. And it all revolves around like what we were talking about. You have to figure out which animals in your program take to this artificial insemination, embryo transfer, all of that. So, and like the fallow was rough trying to get conception rates up because starting out, conceptions were low. Right. And we figured out over time that a lot of it had to do with the drugs that we were accustomed to using in whitetail and doses. And we figured out that, hey, you can't use the same dose in whitetail as you can in fallow because they'll overstimulate. And that in itself will you won't have a good conception no matter what if they overstimulate. And so we're seeing that with all these species. And so you have to go through the process of coming up with the dose responses, timing, all of this. And every species is different. And but those that are experimenting with it now, all they're doing is finding out which animals that they have in their herd that take to this. Right. And then which ones don't. And so those are being weeded out. Right. And then their conception rate is just going to keep on increasing year after year after year. Right. And that's how a lot of these guys that started out doing this, right now, fallow, you're getting, 60, 70, 80%. Yeah,
but what was it 2-3 years ago?
It was about 20%. Right. 20 to 30%.
Right.
And so... And that's the reason why, in any repro program, that's why I said, hey, you can't think that you're just going to get into it and have the same success as the guy that's posting, hey, we got 75% conception on our fallow. And then all of a sudden...
Also, percentages are tricky.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No doubt.
19 out of 20, but it's like you might only have 5 deer, or you might have 100 deer.
That's right. Yeah, your experimental groups kind of are up and down. Right. But depending on what place you go to. And so those guys that see these conception rates on these guys, and they say, well, hell, I've got 100 fallow doe out on the ranch that I'm going to catch. I want you to come out here and AI them. And then, that year they get 30%, and then they're just upset because they're not getting that 60, 70%. And we try to explain to them, hey, those 30 does out of 100 that fawned out, get those, pull them over. You AI those the very next year, then that 30% goes to 70% really quick.
Right.
And so, and then you build off of that. And that way, 3 or 4 years down the road, you have a whole, 200 herd that you're AIing, and you're getting 70, 80%
absolutely
of the best stuff. So
yeah, and then for the people who don't know, one reason when you AI and you're putting them back into a pen setting, which I would assume most people are, they'll have what's called a cover buck.
Yes.
And so can you kind of talk about what that looks like for people?
Well, yeah, for sure. Just to add a little bit more, what Davin was saying, management is critical for the Repro success, because a lot of people, they don't understand, like Davin was saying, you cannot expect having 70-80% of AR results if you just went 2 weeks before and you went with the helicopter and captured fallow deer in the pasture in the wild and just put them into the pens. Right. Probably half of them, they're gonna die. Yeah, it started like that with the whitetail, if I am not wrong. Like, people were capturing the whitetail in the wild, putting them into the pens, and I think the highest result that they were having like 30% AR result. If that was like a really good one, because if you need to remember that deer, they are prey. Everybody wants to kill them. Everybody wants to eat them. So stress is the biggest enemy of Repro.
Right.
So management is the key to success. If having animals adapting by generation into the handling facilities. So deer, they need to get used to see you as a friend, not as an enemy that you're gonna kill it. That's why you're gonna get into your better results with your AI. And now that you're saying about the cover buck, like it depends, because if you have a good management, a good ranch, that you cannot, obviously, I don't want to be negative, I just want to be realistic. You cannot expect 100% AI results.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're doing one, you may be.
Right.
Right. But if you're doing
that
big
goes back off the numbers. Yeah.
Exactly. If you're doing big numbers, you cannot. It doesn't matter if you're like the superstar doing AI or you're the best in the world. You cannot, because it doesn't depend of what you do. It depends many factors like diet, facilities, drugs. Maybe the batch of drugs that you used, it wasn't the greatest, but it's something that you don't really know because you were not handling the drug out of the lab. Maybe somebody left the drug, sitting in the car 100 degrees, and you didn't know that. So if let's say that you're expecting like an okay AI result, which in my opinion will be maybe 60 to 70, it's like an okay AI results. If you have 10 animals that you AI, you're going to have 7 pregnant from AI. So you have those 3 does that they're not going, or they did not take the AI. So what you do, you put like a buck, the one that you want, and then you just let it run free with the females, and those does that they didn't get pregnant, they're gonna cycle again 2-3 weeks later, and the cover buck will natural breed them.
Yeah,
right.
And typically you don't put a cover buck in right away, just for the fact that there is a lot of what he was talking about, stress involved with putting a buck in with a pen with the does. So if you take those 10 does and you have 7 of them take right then, and you put a buck in 5 days later, well, all he's going to do is run those does and run those does and run those does. And that stress buildup can cause those 7 that took to go ahead and slough that embryo. And then that way you don't have that AI success. Usually we'll put cover bucks in right before their cycle, their second cycle coming in. So and typically that's around 18 to 20 days. It's different with different species because different species cycle differently. But typically you want to put that cover buck or bull or whatever you're using in right before that other cycle will come on. That way they have a chance, the embryo has a chance to be fertilized once and then also adhere to the uterine wall, and that way it won't slough during stress. But what he was talking about, there's so many factors involved in having good AI success. Our part of it is just very, very little.
You're just easy to blame.
And we're just easy to blame. That's right. That's right. And a lot of it has to do with management, the nutrition of the animal, the overall workability of that animal, because in order to go through this, it is a process for the animal, because you have to bring an animal in, any of the does, any of the, whether it's artificial insemination or embryo transfer, you have to bring that doe in, one, to put a seeder in, and this is the protocol that we usually use. We put a seeder in, and it's just a progesterone implant. And it basically blocks the estrus cycle. And then usually, depending on the species, between 12 and 16 hours later, you bring her back in, you pull that seeder out, and then you typically give a hormone to kind of start that estrus cycle back up. Some animals need it. Some animals don't. Like we were talking about fallow. Fallow, some places they don't even require it because those animals they just react to it. And so if you give them too much of the hormone to bring them in, then that's what causes them to overstimulate. And so that's the second time you're bringing them in, and then the third time is when you AI them. And then with embryo transfer, then you're bringing them back in 7 days later to flush them. And so the workability of those animals, they have to know routine to keep the stress levels down. And all of that is factors involved in having really good conception rate.
Right. Yeah, because the first two would be, you can, if you have a barn and a chute and everything, you can live.
That's right.
Load them and run them through, and then the last two, they're sedated for those, right?
Yes, yeah. But you still have to run them in a facility, or typically, if you don't have a facility and you're out there darting, conception rates right then is going to be down. Going out and darting animals brings a stress level that really, it's sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not.
Right.
Those that just they don't have the ability or finance to build a working facility, and that's what they have to do to get these better genetics in their herd. We do that, and you get decent conception.
Right.
But if you have a working facility, that's the best avenue, I guess you could say, because then you can train those animals to go in and out of the facility throughout the year. So that way, during time of bringing these does in and going through the protocol of AI, they already have it down. So their stress levels are way down. They know the routine, and so it makes it a whole lot easier.
And I think a lot of people, like I've heard people in the fallow industry say that they won't buy semen because they don't have a working facility, and I don't know if they know that they can work their animals without it.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to, hey, without having a working facility, can you do it? Yes, you can, because both of us we have mobile lab units that we can go to a client's place that all they have are pins. It's just a process of going in and darting all those animals, because it is a time procedure,
right?
And we only have a certain time frame to inseminate. And then once you get out of that time frame, the percentages kind of start falling back.
Right.
And that also depends on species, because some species, they have a longer time frame that you can inseminate, and some of them, they just drop off completely.
Right. Yeah. And what you think would be, at least if you're knowledgeable about it, what you think would be a quick process about this, because we've gone out to ranches just filming, and we'll be there, and they're like, we're following y'all's paperwork and everything, and it's like, oh, run these 10 does through. All right, we got to wait 45 minutes until the next one, but that's because of what's to come.
That's the staging process, and that's management as well. So your ranch manager, your pen manager, we have a process of going, okay, we can AI so many deer per hour. So depending on the number of animals in those pins, you have to kind of calculate, okay. And then you have to add in, okay, how long does it take to get these deer out of the pen, put them in the building? You have to, factor all that in.
Right.
And so, but like I said, the first year, you have to go through this process, and not just us, and not just the deer, but the staff, the manager, the pen guys, the guys that are feeding, the guys that are working, all those guys have to go through what's going to work best in those different scenarios, because not all the facilities are the same, and not all the pens are set up the same. So what works good at one place might not work good at another place. So you have to go through all these processes to get your best success.
Absolutely.
So it takes a while.
Yeah, and I think that's on the managing process, that's something that a lot of people overlook, because a lot of guys don't even know what to watch for when an animal is sedated.
That's right.
Like we were in a trailer with a water buffalo years ago, and this guy freaked me out. He just grabbed on the top and jumped on the stomach, but the animal burped up and did whatever, and I don't remember what he said it was, but he was like, oh yeah, it was, doing this. He was going to die in 2 minutes. And I was like,
yeah, it's probably aspirating.
I wasn't even paying attention. We were just sitting here talking like this, and he's like, hold on. And did that to such a large animal just to get it to regurgitate. But it's crazy.
And that happens. And that's different drugs and everything that we use. And they have different reactions to it, and every species is different and have different reactions. So it's a process of trying to figure out which works and what doesn't. And there's always the pharmaceutical companies always come up with different drugs year after year, and they claim, okay, this works a little bit better than this drug, but this species has different reactions in this species with one part of the drug that's in there. And so trying to figure out what works to sedate certain species, that's another aspect of it. So there's a lot that goes into having success in the repro world. But when you have that, it's extremely productive. And it's a lot of fun.
It's always a risk anyways, using drugs when an animal is always going to be a risk.
Right. Yeah, it's always, again, risk versus reward, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to knock them down because it's a risk. And it's like, yeah, but we talk about it in our office all the time, because everyone focuses on ROI, return on your investment, but what is your COI, your cost of inaction? Because if you don't breed to this buck, if you don't breed to a specific sire, or you pull embryos, what is it going to cost you 5 years from now? What is it going to cost you in the long run versus the risk of darting your animals and running through this process?
And the repro side of anything, you don't want to look at what the reward is going to be, that year. It's always, 2, 3 years, 4 years down the road, what you're doing today. just for the fact that a lot of it revolves around what the animal produces, at 2 and 3 years old.
Right.
And so, and you do have to go off of what your goal is as an operation, like in the whitetail, if you're just strictly a stalker buck, which about 90% of the people are right now.
Right.
Until, this other aspect of the breeding values and everything comes into place, which it already has. I mean, that brought in a different avenue of semen sales, and eventually it's going to be repro for us as far as trying to get those breeding values up over a shorter period of time. And then for the breeder, once you get those values up spread throughout your entire herd in your pens, then you start selling those values and everything up to different breeders.
Right.
So it's going to be depending on what goal you're wanting to do.
Right.
What your final goal is, it's always going to be 3, 4, 5 years down the road that you have to look at.
Right. Yeah, and Lala, I know more about the Texas specifically, but like in Mexico and stuff, are they focused on the GEB values at all, or are they mainly just shooter stalker market?
Not really. In Mexico, we are not at that point yet. Not only in Mexico, but like different countries that we work at, we have 3 purposes for breeding deer. One is trophies, which is, I would say, is the smallest industry, according with the number of clients that we do have. Trophy is the smallest. The biggest is velvet for the Asian market, and then the other one will be venison. So all the repro that we do is, for example, you want to produce the biggest antlers in the world. So you do the insemination or you do the embryo transfer and all the repro. If you want to produce the biggest or the heaviest antlers for velvet to produce this medicine or the Asian medicine that they use with the antlers, so you just select your animals that they produce the biggest and the heaviest antlers in your ranch. Or if you want to produce on the third purpose, it will be venison. You will select the animals that they have the biggest body size. So you will produce more meat, more venison to do that. But in Mexico, we don't have CWD because we don't look for it. It's not a problem, honestly, for us. We do have other different diseases that they really kill the animals, in our opinion, in our experience.
Yeah.
CWD is not or has not been a problem for us yet. Might be. We don't really care. We're still producing and breeding animals for hunting, which is antler size. We are not at the point that, in the States, in Texas, is totally changed.
Right.
Like people, they need to breed for the values in order to survive in the industry, if I can say it that way.
Yeah, and you're right. It definitely changed the industry, the whitetail industry in Texas, CWD.
Some people got lucky, some people didn't.
That's right. And some people had to depopulate the entire herd, which is devastating.
Yeah.
Devastating to owners when you put all your heart, money, soul, anything into a breeding program, and then something like this comes along, and you're mandated to go ahead and depopulate.
Right.
But I don't think that this is going to kill an industry. I think there's too many people that breed, that have a passion for it, that won't allow that.
Right.
And if it's the breeding values that kind of helps helps the industry kind of get over this CWD hump, you can say, then I think that's probably the route that everybody needs to take.
Right.
And if Parks and Wildlife are going to kind of make herd plans and everything revolving around that, which is not the case right now, but it seems to be, trending in that direction, then that's what people need to be focusing on.
Right.
Is trying to get that. I know that, of course, with when scrapies was such a big hype,
Right.
All they did was breed it out. And now you don't have any issues with scrapies right now. So I think that's probably what it's going to take. And eventually, we'll have the whitetail market industry back to where it was.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely, and I'm with you. Like, I totally agree that the deer industry is not going to finish, because for me, coming from another country and now living in the States, I can see the culture, that you guys have about the whitetail is like massive. Like, it's not something that you guys are gonna let it go for sure. I mean, if the industry changes and you guys need to do different colors of deer, I'm sure you guys are gonna get it done.
We'll adapt. Yes.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the number one species in Texas is whitetail, and it's always been that way. The hunting industry is number one in the nation, and so it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah,
and it's not. And really and truly, it's going to be the breeders that help eliminate this CWD scare.
I know this wasn't this is more of a Repro podcast, but in my mind, it's just one of those things. It's like, I wish we'd put it into Blue Tongue, EHD, this millions of dollars of research. If we haven't gotten to the billions yet, it's like, I wish that all this was going into something that's actually killing deer. Don't want to get too political with that.
Yes.
But that's something I think you're right, man. If you're a person who's breeding stalkers, I wish I had 500 to sell today.
Yes.
Because everyone already is asking. I know people who've already sold stalkers. We're in May.
Yeah, we've already sold out. and it's going to be like that because of the CWD. There's a lot of people that have gotten out.
And hold on, Davin, I don't want to skip over that real quick because I don't think that many people know how many stalkers y'all move. How many stalkers are y'all sold out of?
Oh gosh, let's see, that would be 220.
Yeah, because most people when they say, "Oh, I sold out," it's 30.
Yeah. We typically move around anywhere from 200 to 300. I think that we sold close to 300 last year, and it was easy selling them.
Yeah.
And stalker prices right now are what I feel is the highest they've ever been, and to a point where, 5 years ago, if you had asked me, I said, "Man, you're crazy." But it just goes off of supply and demand.
Right.
And right now, because of there's a lot of people that got out, supply is short, demand is high, so stock prices are going to stay that way. Eventually, I think it'll settle back down. Yeah. But as of right now, I can sell 500 of them if I had them.
Yeah.
Wish I did though.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone needs to sell stalkers, contact Davin. But yeah, I mean, going back to the repro side, especially you, Lala, I know this takes you all over the world from, like you said, from the Asian market to where. Do you mind kind of sharing a little bit about where all you go and what species you touch in each country and each state?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we go all the way from New Zealand, which is we work there mainly with red deer. These guys. They are probably 34 years ahead of us in America. They are producing now red deer at 4 years old that they are over 1,000 inches, which is super, super cool. Like in America, red deer, like 700, 600 inches is a massive animal. In Mexico, we don't really have these industry yet about the red deer. So we have like probably 300s. So nobody likes to shoot those ones because they're not impressive. But if you had 1,000 inches, I'm sure that I will be maybe the first one trying to shoot one.
Yeah.
So, New Zealand, we do the red deer. We do a little bit of elk in fallow as well. And then we also work in Canada with elk and red deer. We work in 16 states in the U.S., Australia. We also do Mexico, several states there. Mexico, we are really big in whitetail and really big in mule deer.
Yeah.
So we do have the biggest mule deer in the world. And this year we're going to be the very first one doing repro on these bighorn sheep.
Really?
That's gonna be like the new thing now.
Wow.
They're like super expensive. They're like, I think the cheapest or one of the first on the menu. They're like 60,000.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting trying to do the repro on those guys, because you are doing two things at the same time. You are doing conservation and because of the hunting, because people who are going to give the value of the animals are the hunters.
Right.
So it's going to be a really big project. And the mule deer industry is just insane. Like all the breeders there are sold out. For 3-4 years. Like if you want to go there and shoot one, you need to be on the waiting list for at least 2 years, for sure. And the whitetail deer, I think we are not far away from you guys in the States, because all the genetics that you guys produce, you guys sell the genetics to Mexico.
Right.
So, I mean, sadly, what is happening here in Texas is helping the Mexican industry, because you guys are kind of like slowing down for now, and Mexico is catching up. So it's going to be okay. Who knows, in the future, we might be exporting deer genetics into the States in order to a specific breed that you guys don't have anymore because of the depopulation and all things that are happening.
Right.
We might be able to bring it back into the States. So we do all this work in different countries, and it's very interesting because you see a lot of culture, you meet a lot of people in different deer species, and now we can tell that deer are, I would say that it's already kind of established in the research. We are having good results. Like when Dr. Mike started the embryo program, they were having like 1 average and stuff like that. So it was like better just to doing the AI rather than spending all that money on the embryo work.
Right.
And it's going to happen that with the exotics. It's coming.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, again, supply and demand drives the price, helps conservation, does all those things, and so I'd be really curious to see when y'all do that bighorn project, because that's going to be major.
That's going to be fun.
Yep.
Do you already have that on the books?
Look how happy he is.
Yeah, we're going to do the project. I told you the second week of October. So we already have the females inside of a pen and with no male. So they're getting ready. We just need to, we cannot do it before that because the weather is so hot.
Right.
They're used to 100 degrees like normal. But in order for the management, is not the greatest. So we want to give them the best chances to have the best results.
Right.
Because it's something that is going to come. And again, it's exotics. It's something that has not been done before. So it's something that we're trying to push.
Different protocols, procedures. And
right. And it fills up your schedule throughout the year, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Like I know it's kept us busy.
Yep.
Like in normal times where it'd be like, oh, it's kind of slow, or hey, I wouldn't say slow, but like we can breathe a little bit.
Yep.
And then like now it's like, oh, everything's under high water all year round.
Yep.
Yeah, our families let us know year after year after year. You know, we used to have time where you have certain times of the year that is a slow time, so you can spend time with your family. And now a lot of that is getting used up because of exotics, and
Right.
Which it's lucky for us that we have wives and family that understand this is our passion and everything. So
Right.
they're the ones that have to deal with it,
Right.
especially our
Yep.
wives.
Absolutely.
But yes, with this exotics coming on, it kind of brings a whole different avenue
Right.
into our work and into the industry, really. So,
Right.
and like I said, the funnest part is trying for me and for Lala as well, is trying to figure out these new species, new protocols, and so when we have phone calls and say, hey, I have an Inyala that's pretty good, you want to come out and collect it? Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. Yes, we will.
Yeah.
And so, and we've collected several species so far, and done work on several species so far. So it's just something that we just kind of build off of and build off of and build off of. And it's just going to bring in a different avenue, and hopefully over time we can actually get different genetics into these exotics, because they've been closed off for so long. In order to increase that genetic capability, you have to bring in new lines and whatnot. But and hopefully over time that'll happen.
Right.
But that's government and trying to make sure that we don't get certain diseases in the states that other countries have. So.
Right. Because Texas is no longer allowed to ship animals to Mexico, right? Like Texas shut down the borders.
It's open again.
It's open.
Oh,
again.
it opened again?
Yeah, it's
Good.
open.
It's open again. And then, of course, if you have certified herds, you can send to Oklahoma, and there's a few other states, but a lot of these states are kind of closed off,
Right.
just because of the CWD,
Right.
and definitely different countries. Yeah. We would love to send some of our fallow genetics over to New Zealand,
Right.
but we can't because of CWD. And so they close their borders off, so we can't ship that over. But
Can you not even ship semen or anything?
no,
Even though there's no proof that it transfers through semen or
No.
man.
no. And I feel that that the fallow industry alone in Texas is probably better than any other place in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And it seemed like it's, and I know that there's been people that breeding fallow for years and years and years, but it seems like just over the past 5 years,
It's exploded.
yeah.
I mean, from prices, from sales, there was hardly any semen sales ever before in fallow.
That's right.
And then antler growth.
And the growth is unreal.
Yeah, just seeing the size. Obviously, we got to film and photograph Grimm, largest fallow that's ever been grown.
Yep.
And I think that's going to be broken this year.
Oh, definitely.
And
I got a sneak peek at him.
yeah. And so, if not multiple, doing that.
Yes.
And so,
Yep.
I guess there will be more on that in a couple months as far as what we can release. But yeah, just being able to break records continually like that, and how big some of these yearlings are getting, and how big these 2-year-olds. And so, from a business standpoint, how soon can this turn into how whitetail's like, hey, can you have shooters by 2 years old? Hey, can you have this instead of 3, 4, 5?
Yep.
Now, what is that going to turn for the stalker market for fallow? Because that's all because of conservation. This never would have been to that point without repro, without taking these other points. And so that's another step that a lot of people don't even realize. They just go, oh, yeah, the breeders take care of that. But it's like, yeah, but how did they get there?
Yeah. And there's a yearling over at NT that Nash will probably post here pretty soon. That's, I mean, I'm always accustomed to, the little spike, little yearlings and whatnot. And this one is, he's already paddled out. So it's unreal. But yeah, no. And the thing about it is that, that's the fallow industry. You could just, and really and truly what's kind of pushed that is the repro side of it. It always used to be just natural breeding on those guys just because of, conception rates were so low. And when people understood that, hey, to get better conception rates, you have to go through the process, then semen sales started skyrocketing because a lot more people got into it. And, of course, when prices start going up, then there's more interest in that. And the AI and embryo work kind of pushed that way. But it's happening in other species. The access right now is just unreal.
Right.
It used to be that I only did, a handful of access AIs a year. And this past year I did 450 of them.
Wow.
So, and it's just going to increase. And eventually we're going to start seeing those axes that are, your 200-inch axis. And those are going to be your 40-inch beams with 18-inch caudals and 18-inch brows.
Right.
It's going to get that
happen.
way. And the thing about it is a lot of people are accustomed to having certain avenues of an industry in sales, and they think that all repro does is just kind of crash a market. That's not the case. It brings in different aspects of the market. So, like for access, you're always going to have your guys that are going out and trapping stockers and selling to ranches for shooters, and that shooter market is always going to be the same. It's not going to, just because there's an axis that sells for 60, 70 grand online, that's not going to push prices up, because those are specific animals. Those are special animals that you want to buy and bring into a breeding program. And all the breeding program is going to do is increase that stalker, that not the stalker, but the trophy aspect of it. And so you're going to see axis that people shoot for 25 grand, 30 grand. It's coming.
It's bound to happen.
It's coming, and you're going to have an axis breeder that sells for $100,000. And that's going to be within a couple of years, I promise you.
Absolutely.
If not a year. Because there's people that have been in the axis breeding now for 3 or 4 years, and so because of the registry, it helps them out to figure out which genetics will line up, and then which ones that'll cross out.
Right.
And those cross outs, it's just like the whitetail. It's just like any breeding industry. You cross up genetic lines at work, and then you have a tight line that you outcross, and that's where you get your increased genetic potential.
Right.
And it's coming. It's happening.
Oh, because that's what I think is, as far as like the registry, like I don't know how much somebody would pay if they had Ancho's mom, if they had Alpha's mom, if they had any of these big axis, any species that they, even fallow is still relatively new.
Yep.
And there's people who have built out pedigrees, but like I would say probably 80 to 90% of them are still just first to second generation.
Listen. When you're having ranchers that know the quality of certain genetics, and you have ranchers that are willing to pay $10,000 per bred doe, just baseline bred doe, bred to a certain buck, just for ranch release. Yeah, when it gets to a point where hey, so and so's mom, that's going to be a $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 doe.
Right.
Access doe, and for some people, it just blows their mind that access does that you were catching off of ranches and selling for $300. Now, they're going to be going for $75,000, $100,000 for certain ones.
Right.
And it's going to happen, and people that know the value of those animals are willing to pay that because they know that they can get that return back on a short-term basis. So.
Well, that's what like everyone that was posting those crappy comments on Facebook on that Axis buck you mentioned earlier that sold for $70,000, but like if you have the buyers and you are the seller, that absolutely makes sense for that because if you could sell 10,
it's a no-brainer.
10 does at $10,000, made your money back in a month.
That's a no-brainer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. And because, there's more and more people getting into the breeding business, you're going to have more breeders that want to partner up on certain bucks, that want certain offspring to cross with theirs. $70,000, for a buck like that, which, I've seen a lot of Axis bucks. I've seen that buck in person now, and it's probably the largest one I've ever seen. So I think that those guys would definitely get their money back on that if they haven't already, which like they already have. So
because it had potential. From what I heard, this was from a guy in not Uvalde, wherever it was. But didn't know anything about it, but we were texting about it, and he's like, yeah, I did a rough score based on what I could see, and he's like, that has potential to be the number one Axis. And so I don't know if that's been confirmed yet, but that was just what he saw off a couple pictures in the video.
Just going off the measurements, yes. That's getting on up there to where it's getting pushing close, if not over the number one. I wouldn't look at that as going off of just of a breeding purpose, because you can get number one off of different aspects of measurements, but to have a buck that has everything like this deer did, it's something that you can definitely build off of, and that's a foundation that breeders they look at certain animals and say, okay, this is something starting out. But starting out, you don't want to start, basic. If you can start out with a top out there and then build off of that, that's where you're going to increase that genetic potentially faster at a faster pace.
Absolutely.
So if you're going off of like an Axis, I think as a genetic standpoint, one of the hardest things to get on an Axis is caudal length. You can have a 36, 37 inch Axis, but the caudals are only 6, 7 inches, 8 inches.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. But if you have, like this, 35-inch beams, 35 spread, and he had 16-inch caudals, and I think it was 13 or 14-inch brow tone, that has it all. So if you start breeding that in, and then you start pushing the beams and the eye guards and everything out a little bit further, then you start getting to that 200-inch, that 40-inch beams and 18-inch caudals, and the world record, trophy production that all these breeders, that's what they're after.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, as far as traveling and everything, I think it's crazy. But one thing that you mentioned earlier that I don't know if people really know about, I don't know if it's kind of hush hush or not, but like with the Asian market, so like you're saying, these people will take like red deer or elk, and even though they're still in velvet, they'll cut them if they know they're not going to be a breeder or know they're not going to be a shooter. And when they cut that velvet, what do they do with it from there?
So these red deer and elk, whitetail is not on the list because the mass that the whitetail deer has is not worth it. So the red deer and the elk, they're bred for that specific reason in some places. Like I had the chance to go to I did go to China and Mongolia to see all these red deer, elk, and the Sitka or Sitka breeding facilities, and it was just unreal, the way, totally different way that they handle the animals. They don't have big places. They don't have big facilities. They're just like a small little brick pens made of brick, and they do have like a handful of animals and everything in every single space. So they breed the animals for the mass. So you know the deer, they drop the antlers every year, and they grow with this velvet tissue, which is like is full of blood. So you has been a lot of research for the velvet for many years. I think the Chinese industry or the Asian culture has been cutting velvet for the last 100 years.
Really?
Yep. And has been done a lot of research in the at the University of Shanghai. Has a lot of deer velvet or deer antler is the, let me see if I can say this right, is the fastest growing tissue in the world. It can grow up to 2 inches per day on the elk, which is
That's insane.
It's insane. So people, they after they drop the antlers and they start getting growing back, there is like a specific time that you can cut them. And it's not like, I'm going to cut it today because it looks like it's big. So you have to be trained to do that. And just to give you like a example, you have to cut. They have different stages or different quality of the velvet, because the more they grow, the more they calcify, or the more bone already is made on the antler. In the Asian market, they want what they call the jelly tip, which is like kind of like a soft antler. So we were cutting the antler around 60 days. And then you cut, you need to obviously do it very professionally, and you give anesthesia on the base of the antlers so they don't suffer, they don't feel any pain. And then surgically you remove the antlers, and then you put those antlers, because they're full of blood. So you need to put them into the freezer, and then you export that antler to Asia. And when I went to China to see all these factories, so what they do when they get the antler, they dehydrate the antler in specific machines, and then they do these pills, like for like medicine, and they claim that they help you out with the joints, with like a aphrodisiac as well, which is kind of like the main thing. But a lot of people, they say that it does work, because a lot of people from NFL and NBA, they take these velvet pills, because the growing factor is just too much, and the deer, because if you think about it, they lose one part of their body every year, and it comes back bigger than last year. So it's very, very interesting, right? This science about the deer antlers.
Yeah, it's crazy of all the business aspects from all the different kinds of, from every part, like from the velvet where you can do it to when people will buy antlers from there, and those become anything from dog treats to keychains to whatever. Yep. And then obviously the part we've been talking about the whole time. And so this whole thing, that if people don't know or really support breeding or hunting, they don't realize like how much this goes into everyday life.
Yes.
Like it's not just conservation trying to save a species. That's the foundation of why we do all this. But at the same time, it's affecting so many people, thousands of jobs all across America, all across the world.
Yeah.
And you can't just get rid of one part because you don't like hunting.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you might try to get rid of one part, but you're taking away 10,000 jobs because of this one industry being shut down in one specific part of it.
Right.
Yeah. Hunting is the most known industry. At least in America.
Right.
Like in New Zealand, a lot of the clients that we do have that they breed for venison or for meat, they export the venison to Germany because big part of the culture there is, eating the venison. Not much, for example, in Mexico. I don't know, for you guys here in Texas, eating the venison, it will be, I don't know, maybe big culture. But like in Germany, you go to these fancy restaurants and you have these like beautiful red deer or elk steaks, very pricey.
Right.
And also like I was telling you, the velvet pills. So out of the three industries, or out of the three main industries, hunting is the most known in America.
Yep.
Yeah, and earlier, it's funny because it's the most known, but you said in your business earlier, it's the least of your business.
Yeah.
Well, certain aspects of the
Right.
industry, like in New Zealand. New Zealand is a little bit different than over here in the States. The breeding business in the States, I would say, has the trophy side of it is the largest
Right.
side of it. Their industry over there is a little bit different, where the trophy side of it is the smallest. And that's basically that in New Zealand, Australia, and
Canada as well.
Canada.
Yep.
Yeah. And but the one that's well known the most is the hunting industry.
Right.
So there's a lot of people that doesn't like the aspect of just breeding animals in pens just to turn out and shoot.
Right.
But that's a small portion of the breeding industry as a whole.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of one thing I wanted to do is starting this podcast. Just, I don't know anything. Like I told Daniel on the last one, I was like, I'm just somebody that knows somebody and trying to help everybody.
Yep.
It's just trying to bring on people, talk about different subjects, trying to get things known.
Yep.
Just because I don't think there's a lot of people who believe our beliefs, our core values, doing stuff like this. Like there's only a handful of people, and TV's kind of dying and stuff like that. So if there's a way you can get a podcast out, put it on the internet, and anyone can listen to it anywhere.
Well, I would say that that the breeding industry is not just what some people think is growing these animals in pens and then turning them out and shooting them. There's a lot of, I would say a majority, if not all the guys that are in the breeding business, is because they love that aspect of raising animals and the
Right.
husbandry between, but they have to have income to support that. And right now, the number one, in the States, is the hunting aspect of it. It is the trophy side.
Right.
Now, if we had different avenues of venison or something else, that would probably venture. But right now, hunting is the number one industry driver in the United States right
Right.
now. So that's the one that gets the a lot of scrutiny, I guess.
Right.
But
What's the hardest species that you guys collect?
God, I don't know, what is it for
Well,
you?
you have collected more than I do, but in my opinion, in my experience, mule deer.
Yeah, well, yes.
Mule deer is one of the toughest because but deer talking, I would say is the most difficult. But Davin has more experience because he has collected way more exotics than I have.
Mule deer is one. I don't think that I've really ever gotten a really good collection off of a mule deer. But sable and bongo, they're kind of difficult to collect. But I think a lot of that revolves around drugs that are used to sedate, and because it has different effects on the process, the ability for them to stimulate and to give collections.
Right.
And then a lot of these drugs, they will, some of them will relax that ability to urinate, and some of them won't. So that's one thing that pretty much kills a collection is urine. Not a lot of people think or even wonder about that, but yes, no. Ureic shock is something that'll just you can get a really good collection, but then all of a sudden, boom. And probably the number one species that I just can't stop from doing that is zebra. Zebra is, it just seems like every single time that we try to collect a zebra, it'll urinate. So we're to a point now, if we just get anything whatsoever, you change out real quick.
Now, is that all, because what is there, 6 different species of zebra?
Yeah.
And
no, that's all of them.
All of them?
Yeah, all of them. The one that we've collected the most is gravy.
Yeah.
Because, of course,
that's the
most important one.
And just, again, we're speculating that people understand what we're talking about, right? So, gravy zebras are endangered.
Yep.
And can't hunt them, can't do anything. And so, that's why it's the most important.
Yep.
I'm trying to be better about, like I said, not assuming people know when we're like, oh, dude, that's the most important one.
And so that going into, that species, they're the most sought after, or the most on the repro side of things.
Right.
Trying to figure out, okay, how can we increase the numbers over a shorter period of time? And so there's guys that are trying to put embryos and mares and donkeys and everything else out of those, and trying to get that trying to get that process down.
Have you had a successful embryo?
Not that I know of.
Because what does a female sell for?
Oh my gosh,
a mature breeding age, like $100,000?
Yeah, it's something
at least.
At least.
It's crazy.
And that's the cool side of it, and the important side of the repro business. I think it will increase potential over a shorter period of time, and increase the genetic ability. Let's see, the most or the scariest collection, I would think, has been on a Cape Buffalo. And we had a client call up and say that he had a really, really big buffalo, probably the biggest one in the state or the nations. He wanted to go ahead and get it collected, and I was all right. And so we went over there, and I was collecting in a small little pen. It was like a 5-acre pen, but they had a pretty good herd size. And they got them in this pen, and I was looking around, and there was 3 or 4 trucks hooked up to these long trailers. And I was like, what are the trailers for? And I said, well, we're going to go in that pen and knock that bull down, and wherever it goes down, we're going to put these trailers and trucks around it. That way that main cow in there doesn't come over there and try to kill you when you're collecting that bull. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. So that was the interesting part of it. And then, sure enough, they went in there with a Jeep and the vet to dart this bull, and one of the cows come running over there and just lift that Jeep up like it was nothing. I was like, no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, you can't back out now.
You don't get hazardous pay, do you?
Yeah, no. But it was the coolest collection, I think, that I've probably done. And it was a huge Cape Buffalo.
Cool.
Did you get the collection done?
Yes, got the collection done.
How many straws did you get?
I'm not sure on that one, because I had to go through the process of trying to figure out, because on freezing semen, you have different freeze curves and everything else that you have to go by. Bulls are one thing, but doing buffaloes and deer and everything has a different curve. So I had to go through experimental processes of trying to see which curve works the best. And we ended up getting a decent collection. I think it was, I don't know, maybe 30, 40, I don't know. It was a while back. But and also some of the semen that you get, it has different what we call, different byproducts, junk in there that you have to kind of sift out, especially if you have gel fractions in there and stuff like that. A lot of guys, and I do too, will centrifuge it down, and typically you get the best quality of the ejaculate that you can kind of sift out of there. But so we had to go through a lot of processes trying to get that semen to freeze, or have the best process to get the best outcome. So I went through several different samples until I got to the best curve and everything. So I think we ended up getting 30, 40 straws, something like that.
That's awesome.
But it was good experience.
Right.
Good protocol.
It won't be your first Cape Buffalo when you go to do it again.
Oh, no. Yeah, I've done a couple since then. So so now I've got the process down and the protocol down. It is, there's different extenders that need to be kind of experimented with because, like I said before, there's certain species that they don't interact well with the glycerol that are in the extender itself over a period of time, and some species do, like fallow. Fallow, you can have just a single, one part extender because it has a glycerol and everything made up in there, and you can keep them in there for 12 hours before you start processing it. Certain species, within 3 to 6 hours, you need to start processing it. Otherwise, those cells will what we call osmotic shock, where you'll go through the process of freezing and everything, and then you'll do your post thaws, and then you have just a lot of cells that are just swimming in circles. And typically, that semen doesn't fertilize real well.
Right.
So it's different with different species. So and that's what we're talking about. This industry is growing, and we're kind of trying to push that to where we get to be the guys that come up with the different protocols and procedures, and it's fun for us to try to figure that out because we're on the forefront of it.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, that was my my coolest collection experience is that. Now with my on the repro side of it, on the artificial insemination side of it, is probably doing some bongo. Those were pretty cool.
Did they take?
No, but we weren't necessarily. They took the insemination, yes, but we were doing the flushing part of it, and so and we didn't want to knock them down. So I was doing what we call a rectal flush, and so that's with my arm. That's one thing that I didn't know is if my arm will fit up in a bongo's rectum, but it did. And once you get in, you have to try to find the cervix and manipulate the tools through there to 1, inseminate and then 2, flush. And then we were going to go through the process of collecting those embryos and then transferring them into eland cows as recips. And so that's interspecies embryo transfer.
Right.
And you can have species that are related. Typically, those that can breed out in the wild. You could do the interspecies embryo flushing.
Because you're mainly looking for like womb size, right? So they don't die during the birthing process.
That. But there's also gestation periods and stuff like that. You have to have a close relative that has the same kind of gestation periods as the donors themselves. And the bongo and eland, we know that they're similar. It's been done before. There's very little literature on it whatsoever. But we've been able to go ahead and flush the embryos and get the embryos. It's just trying to get the eland cycle to a point where they go ahead and take them. We're still in the process of that, though. But then certain species that we've done on like the Eastern Western Caucasian tour, which is exotic sheep, and trying to transfer those into some Ibex Spanish crosses. We successfully had some of those take, but the gestation was not right. So those offspring didn't survive past couple of weeks. But trying to get those processes down and stuff like that, it takes a lot of manipulation and a lot of research and a lot of experiment. So it takes time. So
we'll get there. Like now that you're saying about the urine, people in New Zealand they used to knock all the stags down to collect semen from them, and they were having exactly the same problem like urine every single time. So the sample, it was always contaminated with urine. So they never had like a beautiful post-thaw sample till Dr. Mike started playing with some of the red deer, and they were running the stags into the facility, and they were not drugging them. So they were collecting them like cattle, standing. Like the animal is totally awake.
That's awesome.
So he has all the time to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's how they did it. And now the semen quality is way up to 80-90%.
And eventually, you're going to do that in the States as well with these exotics. There's just going to have to be slight, different design structures throughout the facility to squeeze these animals in. And certain facilities have already started doing that. And that's the next step is trying to collect, because all the exotics that we've collected so far have been sedated. And quality is not there, and I think it revolves around sedation, drugs used, but I think in all, them bringing them in the facility to where we can collect them live is going to be key.
Right.
So
you can't do something like that with whitetail. I mean, they have to be knocked out, because otherwise they'll die. People tried in the past collecting semen out of the whitetail awake, and some of them they were dying right there, or some of them they were dying 2-3 days later because of the post stress problem.
Right. Lala, do you have any crazy stories or any interesting?
Quite a few. Some of them I can't really tell you.
Yeah.
No. For sure, we have been, visiting too many places. But no, we do have a lot of stories down in Mexico. Doing all these collections and AIs and places that you shouldn't be doing AIs and people that you don't really know that you're working for. But I think one of the most challenging times are coming is going to be the bighorn sheep, because again, we don't really know the protocols. We don't really know exactly the dosage of anesthesia, hormones, timing. We're just going to start with the base protocol with sheep in general, and then we're gonna move from there. But the problem is that you need to wait pretty much like a year to come back and see, I'm gonna change. Instead of 1 hour, I'm gonna change 3 hours, or instead of putting 1 ml, I'm gonna put 2. So it takes time. Is obviously times is one of the most valuable things in repro, because or genetically. That's why we do the embryo program, because you want to gain time or the fastest that you can, instead of just like we told you before, instead of just having 2 or 3 babies per year, you might have 30. So not all the does will respond like that, but if you have one like that, you're on the other side. You're ahead of everybody else. So. I think that's going to be one of the best times that will come.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because like
awesome for you.
Our bighorns known, like Trans-Caspian Urials, they're known for having twins, right? So like our bighorns sheep the same way, or
I think they only have one. Again, we don't really know very well, because we're used to just see those animals in the wild. And now that you guys were talking about hunting, these animals were endangered. They were almost extinct down in Mexico, till someone came up with the idea, like, we're going to hunt them legally. Instead of just letting the poachers finish them, we're gonna sell the huntings, and they were like, man, are you crazy? Because natives, at the island where they live, they were just shooting those ones or killing them for just for meat, just for food. And then someone said, like, we're gonna start promoting these, and we're gonna protect them, but we're going to give the value to the animals for the hunters, because the hunters are the ones that are gonna pay for it as a unique species. And that's how they come up with the price that these guys they have. Obviously, in the future, if we can have more product, prices are going to go down. But which is going to be, now most of the hunters they hunt this sheep because of the experience to have one of these.
Right.
But in the future, our goal is again hunting conservation. You want to bring people or bring hunters that they're gonna pay, big amount of money for the biggest bighorn sheep in the world,
right?
And at the same time, you are just keeping the population up, in order for the animals not be in danger. So it's two things at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah. Because like you mentioned, the bighorn sheep start at about
60,000.
They go up to six figures very quickly.
Yep.
And I can't imagine what the current number one was sold for, or any of that. So, it's got a lot of potential from finances as well as the conservation, because, it's there.
Right. Yeah. When you have the biggest or the best in the world, doesn't matter the species, you can ask the money that you want.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, one of my last questions is, what's one of the biggest misconceptions in y'all's industry that people just assume about, it's easy or whatever else?
I guess that you should be able to AI anything and get good conception rates because everybody else is doing it. Because that's if one group or one ranch, one breeding operation can get high conception rates on a certain species, then I can too.
Right.
That year, you eventually can if you go through the processes, but that would be the number one thing, and that also that we have a bigger role as technicians and guys that actually AI on the conception part of it. Like we said before, we play just a small role in this process. It's a technical role, and there's very few that do it. But our role, our portion of it is just minute in the whole scheme of getting good conception rates on any repro program,
right?
Whether it's AI, embryo, or whichever.
Like talking about AI, like insemination, as a semen tech or as an inseminator, you have to guarantee, or your job is to put semen alive where it has to be. Put it that way. The rest is food management, environment, disease, like a lot of factors.
Yep.
Right.
You just need to guarantee the client that you're going to put the semen alive where it has to be at the right time.
So basically, if you look at the whole overall scheme of things, in the say for whitetail, whitetail is in the whole year process and breeding process and gestation process. The number of months involved, our process is 2 minutes. That's it.
Yeah.
And so everything else revolves around that animal, where it is, the nutrition, and the least amount of stress as possible.
Right.
And unfortunately, that all revolves around management. And so I would think that would probably, for both of us, I would think it would be, that would be the most misconception of our business, is that if you have the animals, you should be able to get the same success as your neighbor down the road. Yeah. And that's not the case. Not saying that you can't. Not saying that your program can't get better than your neighbor down the road. But
right.
It revolves around how you manage your animals.
Right. So. Yeah. It's possible, but it's not likely.
Yeah.
And we're the easiest people to blame when you don't have good results. Just to give you an example. 2 or 3 years ago, I can remember very well, in Mexico, I eyed two ranches, like they were, very close by. So one had, I'd say, 60%, and the other one had 20%. Mm. So the other guy, the guy who had like really bad results, he said, Lala doesn't know how to do the insemination, and I'm gonna use someone else. And the other one said, well, it's the same person. When we had better results, I don't think this guy is a problem. And with the time, we found that they didn't give any water after the AI for like 4 days or something. So obviously, the animals were under massive pressure of stress. So that's why the last thing that they were thinking about, or their body were thinking, was getting pregnant. They just wanted to survive.
Right.
So those little things that, many things that you have to
and it's funny because, well, I guess it's not funny in reality, because I've gone to places and the guy's like, man, my fawn crops are terrible in my pens. And he had these concrete water troughs that were 2 feet high. Yeah. And I was like, well, do you have any other water sources? And he's like, no, well, the fawns are on milk. And I'm like, for a little bit. Yeah. They need water. You don't have fawn tubes on your protein feeders. It's like, after a while, they're off the milk, man.
That's 3 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks they start drinking and eating.
Yeah.
And of course the does keep them on there, but some does, they'll kick them off quick. Mm-hmm. As early as 45 days, they're completely off. So, right. I mean, they get that milk and everything, but they definitely need to have water and protein and everything.
As long as they get that colostrum right at the beginning, they're good. After that, they can survive without it. Now, it's not ideal, but...
It's not ideal, no.
But yeah, it's just funny, I guess, in the aspect of what people think they know. And again, this is me as well. I like to learn, but it's like, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. But don't act like you know everything.
Yeah. And for the repro side of it, it can take your breeding business from average to stellar within a short period of time, but you have to make sure that all your management and everything is in check, and the easiest thing to do is get with your AI guy and say, hey, how do we get there?
Right.
And any one of us would sit down and go over programs with you.
And that's funny too, because we'll have some clients that, like I always say, whether it's business, whether it's your marriage, the number one most important thing is communication.
Oh, yeah.
Because we'll have some people be like, well, Nash's video turned out better than mine. I'm like, me and Nash talk 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about ideas for his fallow breeding videos in January.
Yep.
Like before some of his deer even lose their antlers. And we're coming up with ideas and doing this versus, hey, I got a buck. Can you film it today, have a video ready by tomorrow? I have to produce this now. Yeah. But it's like, man, if, again, managing practices, even on our side, is like, if the more we can plan out, the more we know what we're doing when we leave before we show up, the better your videos are going to be, the better your pictures are going to be. Now, again, there's a lot of variables from like the weather, how the deer are going to act, are they in velvet, are they hard? There's so many different factors, but again, it's so cool to hear in every different industry how, like, I'd say it all the time to the guys. I'm like, I just thought I could buy a really expensive laser engraving machine that's bigger than this desk we're sitting at and just plug and play. No, that was the stupidest thing ever. It's like, there's so many different factors and buttons and things that should, in your mind, are easy, but it was so much more difficult. And I can't imagine from y'all's side to our side to different things we're not even talking about. So, yeah, it's just kind of cool to see that. Now, one thing I would like to talk about is, especially on the exotic side, a lot of times, like I had a guy remind me, we're sitting at a TDA auction or something, and it was right when people started putting exotics into the whitetail shows, and I think a picture of Ruckus came up. Oh, yeah. And it's a whitetail guy. He's never bred, or he didn't even know what fallow were compared to a bongo. He couldn't tell you the difference. And he just said, man, like, do you ever look at like the pictures you use? And so, like, you know, you can go back into some of these pedigrees that are staple names, same pictures from 10, 15 years ago. And he's like, do you ever think about like a lot of these whitetails are like the years like we got to photograph blackjack, pretty renowned name in the whitetail industry, or any other hundreds of whitetail we photographed, but even this fallow axis, all these new industries coming up. He's like, do you ever sit back and think about like when your kids are sitting in these chairs one day at your age, you can go like, yeah, I filmed all the foundation genetics of the fallow and axis. And I was like, wow, I've never thought about, that's really cool.
Yep.
But I bring that up to say, like, have y'all ever considered to sit back and look to be like, hey, we're kind of at the forefront of this exotic stuff. And like one day when people are just knocking out bongo babies at Eland's, like we kind of started that.
All the time. Yeah. Yep. And that's why it's so interesting for us right now, is because, yeah, I mean, we are in the forefront of it. I mean, it's something that it's not going to slow down. It's just going to get more and more widespread, and coming up with those protocols, coming up with those different procedures. That's what's going to drive this industry,
right?
And yeah, that's the cool part about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the coolest, in my opinion, things is, you know, when you see the world record. Doesn't matter red deer or mule deer or whitetail, and you see the picture and everybody's like, wow, that's super, super cool. And you know that you helped to make it, if I can say it that way.
Right.
It's very, very pleasant feeling.
Right. Are you researching online, you know, the largest red stag ever raised, and you see Lala's picture with the antlers sitting there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's the cool part about it, yeah.
But, man, guys, I really appreciate y'all coming on and just sharing your wisdom and knowledge and funny stories.
No, this has been fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, y'all both live 20 minutes from here, so we could come on here and talk about a ton of stuff.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, because there's even stuff that, like, people don't know. Like, a lot of people I talk to don't realize that, like, the difference between horns and antlers. They don't realize that, like, I still don't even know. Anytime someone asks me how you go from velvet to hard horn and it calcifies, and they're like, how does that happen? I'm like, God. Like, I don't know. I don't know the science behind it, but I just know
there's
it happens.
There's a process behind it. Yeah.
What a process.
Yeah. So, I mean, if y'all are, I mean, this is also one of the longest ones. I think it's going to be one of the best ones we've ever done. So, and y'all live down the road. So, we can do a lot of these.
We can do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we finish, like, doesn't matter the industry where it goes, or what species is going to come. Like, people like Davin and I, we're going to always be there with a lot of passion, and we love what we do. That's why we're here.
Absolutely.
And thank you very much for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you all for being here.
Perfect.
Yeah, so if any of you guys want to see more of Davin and Lala, let us know. Or if you have someone you would like to see on the podcast, make sure you go to droptinestudios.com/podcast and let us know. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you. Can we take a picture, quick picture before we go?
Absolutely.
Just to send to the kids.